Good evening for everyone. This is the Licensing Subcommittee C on Tuesday the 25th of May, commencing at 7 p.m. As this is a live streamed meeting, we have protocols for the meeting which I shall advise of in a moment. And then the first item of business will be an election of the chair. Firstly, if I could just advise that apologies have been received on behalf of Councillor Ozan. He will not be attending as he is a ward councillor for the ward in question where the application is for. So he is not attending this evening. And Councillor Vajana Thomas has decided to withdraw from this evening's proceedings to avoid any conflict of interest and gives her apologies. As this is a live meeting, if I could ask that when officers or applicants are speaking, if you could please speak clearly, and if you're referring to any paragraph or diagram or picture, please can you say clearly which you're referring to. If you can keep your microphones on mute unless asked to speak by the chair, and if you wish to speak, if you could use the raise the hand button in the corner, and only speak when the chair has invited you to. If you have any technical difficulties, if you could use the little chat bar in the right hand corner, but as this is a live meeting, there will be, this is visible, and therefore we would only ask that you use that for technical issues. And if there is any persistent or untoward behaviour, the individual would be removed from the meeting and would not be able to return. I think that's all of the protocols at this point. Also, normally with a meeting that is virtual, at the end of the proceedings, the applicant will be asked to withdraw and the live stream will cease, and members will then deliberate, and the decision will be conveyed via the licensing service to the applicant within 24 hours of the decision taken. So as this is the first item on the agenda is the election of chair, could I have nominations for the chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Peters.
Thank you. There being no other nominations, Councillor Peters in the chair.
Thank you very much. So I think we can probably go through a few items on the agenda, and then we should probably adjourn the meeting briefly. So we've done apologies for absence. Do we have any declarations of interest?
No.
There are no minutes of the last meeting. But there is in the pack of papers albeit electronic, a license subcommittee hearing procedure. Before we go any further, I think it might be helpful for us to do a round of introductions. My name is James Peters. I'm a councillor representing de Beauvoir Ward. Councillor Moema?
Yes, I'm Councillor Sam Moema and I represent Hackney Downs Ward.
Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Clifford Hart. I'm the Senior Governance Officer and I'm clerking this meeting and the proceedings this evening. Thank you.
Subancini.
Subhashri Ramana, Principal Licensing Officer.
Amanda.
Hello, good evening. I'm Amanda North, Legal Advisor to members this evening.
We've got Gertch Patty.
Hi, good evening all. My name is Gertch Patty. I'm from the Environmental Protection Team at the London Borough of Hackney.
Wonderful. We've also got Mario here, who is providing technical support for this virtual meeting. And then we've got Mr. Vajsabel, is that right?
Vajsabel, yeah, Daniel. Yeah, on behalf of me.
Welcome. So, as Clifford explained, we were supposed to have two other councillors on this meeting. on this panel, but at a relatively short notice, we've become aware of an issue that means it's probably more sensible for one of them to recuse themselves from this panel, and then Councillor Moama has kindly agreed to step in at short notice. So in order to ensure that Councillor Moama is fully read up on the papers, and I understand that you've already had a chance to have a look at them, but to really digest them, I think what we're proposing is that we have a short adjournment now of 10 to 15 minutes.
I have had a chance to look at the paper, so I think an adjournment of not more than 10 minutes. I'd appreciate that.
More than 10 minutes. So
thank you, Chair.
Okay, so in which case we will adjourn for 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 15:15. Hello again. So again, apologies for the slight break in this meeting, but we are back now and fully versed on this matter. So in order to kick things off, how this works is that the objection to the 10 came from the environmental health team, environmental protection team rather. So we've got Mr. Patty here. So could I invite you just to tell us why you have made this objection? Oh, I've got.
Sorry, Councillor, I have to present the report.
Sorry?
I have to present the report.
Sorry, yes.
Yes.
Right, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. Temporary notice was given to the licensing service in respect of Martello Street and Martello Terrace Junction for the period of 5th of June and 6th of June 2021 from 1300 to 1900 hours each day. We have received objection from Environmental Protection, and that's why this hearing. The premises user have submitted additional information which has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful, thank you very much. In which case, we'll go to Mr. Patty on behalf of the Environmental Protection team.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to read out a very brief statement. So the Environmental Protection team has received complaints of disturbances from customers during a previous temporary event notice held on the 15th of May 2021. Representatives from the London Fields and Safer Neighbourhood panel have written to the council highlighting the negative cumulative impact during the previous temporary event notice and of the current licensed premises within the London Fields area. They feel by allowing this temporary event notice to go ahead, it will add to the public nuisance and antisocial behaviour issues within the London Fields area and cause a disturbance to residential homes. It is alleged due to the previous event held on the 15th of May, residents were impacted by large gatherings around the stall with raised voices, amplified music, increased urination to their properties, with families and children having to witness drunken behaviour. Finally, Environmental Protection would kindly ask the panel to consider the complaints and issues raised by the residents and the cumulative impact if the proposed temporary event notice was granted. That's all.
Thank you very much. And were the complaints, did they relate to the 15th and the 16th of May?
The complaints that have come through, they've said it's for the 15th and the 16th, but when I've spoken to the premises user, Daniel, he has stated that they didn't have the event on the 16th. So okay,
well, we can revisit that.
Yeah,
visit that again when we speak to the premises, Mr. Vice-Admiral. And it was noise that the residents complained of, did you say, but also the signs of drunkenness?
That's correct, yes.
And there was amplified music, they say?
Allegedly.
Okay. What were the hours of operation for the 10 on the 15th and on the 16th?
I believe that was from 1 p.m. until 8 p.m.
Okay, so a little bit longer than here, right?
Yes, a little bit longer than what's been proposed this time around, yes.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Murmer, did you have any further questions for Mr. Patty?
No, I don't have any further questions.
Okay. So, in which case, the next part of this procedure is for us to have the premises user put their case. So that's you, Mr. Vice-Admiral. Apologies for mangling your name. But if you could, just for 5 minutes, say, and by the way, thank you very much for your very helpful email that you sent through. Both myself and Councillor Moama have had a look at that, and that came through, I think, early today. Yes. If you could give us 5 minutes on why we shouldn't issue a stop this 10 from going ahead, then that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you for saying that you've noticed my email where I highlighted everything. Therefore, should I read the email or should I just paraphrase it in my own words?
If you want to pull anything out there that you think is particularly pertinent, I don't think it will be helpful for you to go through it point by point. And if you want to add anything to it, then feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, as a first point, is stated that there is a fundamental error of fact because we were not in London Fields on 16th of May. Therefore, any complaint related to that day, it's not related to our activity in the area. So that would be the first fact I would like to mention. The second fact is that there is police and security guards and park authorities and licensing authorities were present every 30 minutes or every, occasionally they walk by, they checked with us, we had nice conversations with security guards, and they didn't feel that there is any higher level of noise or there is need of dispersal of the customers or if there are any issues in general. So I would like to point that out. Another point is that this time we shortened the hours of event from last time, which was from noon till 8, and we just proposing from 1 till 7 p.m. And there was also the reason because last time we stopped selling right after 7 p.m. and we packed and we went home earlier than 8 p.m. So I can also provide the proof of sale because every sale was made by debit card. Therefore, the last payment was just short after 7 p.m. And also, I would like to point out that other pubs in the area are open way longer than 7, and therefore, I believe that our event has reasonable opening hours compared to the neighborhood. And off license, of course, which are usually around 24/7. In regards to the loud music, we did not play any loud music or any amplified music. We don't have a speaker on the premises. Might be that customer played something from their phone, but I have not noticed any amplifier or any speakers in the area. So I would like to clarify that. It might come from the passing cars or from another establishment. And yeah, in regards to noise of the customers, we haven't noticed any louder sounds than the regular meet of the friends or people walking by or any abnormal activity towards people in the park on the weekend enjoying themselves. And I would like to point out there was one group till the end of the our event. They were close by. They were chatting. They were inside of the park gate, but we didn't feel necessary to confront them on their noise. Yeah, there were no elevated noise. So yeah, on the other hand, everyone who walked by or purchased drinks from us were very happy with our presence, and they appreciate that they can have fresh, low alcoholic drinks on the area and they don't have to queue or travel further into other establishments or purchasing the bottles of vodka or any other hard spirits or 12 bags of beers from the local supermarket. And yeah, I think that's everything what I would like to say.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll just. I have a few questions, and Councillor Mohammed may have a few questions, and then there's a bit of the meeting that's supposed to last for 15 minutes where we have a more general discussion. But just on this idea that there was you're saying that you were only at the site before on the 15th and not the 16th. Is that right?
Correct.
Did you have a 10 for both of those days, and you chose not to
Yes.
use it on the 16th?
Yes, I did have 10 for both days. However, we only got the street vending license we choose only for Saturday, because
Okay.
Sunday the weather would be bad, so we decided not to go.
Okay, and you're clear that you weren't playing any music?
No, not at all.
Okay. Do you, just out of interest, so in order to be able to trade at that part of the sort of on that pavement area, are you have some trading license from the council? Is that right, or not?
Yes, I have street vending trading license for that particular area street.
Okay. Councillor Mohammed, did you have any further questions for clarity?
Yeah, I did. So, the officer Gurchpati has said that residents in the area near where you were trading talked about. So you said that the music was not down to you, and just like increased urination, which I know is an issue in London Fields and has been, particularly last summer. But I wondered if you could reflect on, because you talked about how the people that were coming to your bicycle were happy to see you, but I'm just wondering if there would be any mitigations to try and, I guess, stop customers kind of impacting on neighbouring houses.
Yeah, I was very surprised when Mr. Patty read about urination, because there are freshly built new toilets right next to our bicycle, and everyone was using them. There were no queues in front of the bathrooms, which I was told that other sunny days might happen, but there was definitely no one urinating in the area, or I have not noticed anything. And so that's one fact. And other fact, people were dispersing as soon as they purchased the drink, because they have no intention of standing in front of our bicycle and outside of the park gate. So they usually immediately went inside of the park and went to sit on the bench or on the grass.
I do have another question, and it's for you, Daniel, but also Gurch, which is around, obviously, I think the point about, and correct me if I'm wrong, the point about dispersal is that you are trading and selling to people that pass by, and then is the issue the act of gathering in the park and drinking? Is that what the complaint is about for the council officer? And how much of that is attributable to Daniel?
Okay, okay, thank you, Councillor Momo. The complaint from the residents is that this stall or this temporary event notice is adding to what is already existing in that area. So that's one key point for the nearby residents. And from the allegations that we've received from the residents, they allege that when the customers purchased their drinks, they just congregated and stood around for an excessive amount of time, and there was raised voices, which was causing a disturbance to the residents inside. So, for example, kids may be trying to go to sleep, for example, at 8 p.m. or 7:30, but parents weren't able to put their kids to sleep because of the raised voices and the music levels from the stall.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay.
So we do have a portion of the meeting now that is devoted to a general, a broader discussion about the issues that have arisen here. I think in order to sort of frame this discussion, I think that we need to address what feels very much like an elephant looming over us in the virtual room, which is that there are particular sensitivities around alcohol consumption on London fields. And those issues and sensitivities are, I think, well known to many people locally. And they led the council to seek an injunction to prevent alcohol from being consumed on London fields last summer. And there was a consultation that was published very recently, just yesterday, on adopting a designated public place order to prevent drinking on London fields this summer as well. Now, I strongly suspect that, well, I suspect rather that residents, the complaints around having a bike selling alcoholic drinks on the edge of London fields may have attracted more complaints and concerns from residents because of those heightened concerns about the cumulative impact of people drinking alcohol on London fields, and indeed alcohol being sold around London fields being a licensable activity. Quite how we deal with this here is a question that I think that we're going to have to grapple with in this meeting. Daniel, are you aware of those sensitivities and indeed that context that I've just set out?
Yes, I was aware. One parent stopped by my bike on Saturday and asked me if I have a license and if I there, how long I'm planning to be there. So I told this person that we have a license till 8, but we will only stay 7-ish. And yeah, if there is anything we can help with, she can approach us and talk to us. And she did. Around 7, she asked us how longer we will be there, because she wants to put her kid into the bed, and we were just in the middle of packing. So we told her we stopped selling alcohol and we are leaving now. So that was about 7. So those were from the local residents, and then another person came by and take a picture of our temporary event notice, and he said he's representative of the local residents group, and they try to not have stop drinking in the area, and he was not really friendly, but yeah, he then took a picture and left with that comment, like he was shocked that they didn't ask him about the license, like for his approval for us to be issued the temporary event notice on that particular moment.
Okay, and the issues that had been reported in and I'm not saying that you should have been aware of this, but just to again give a little context around the reasons for resident particular sensitivities here, is that and if you go and have a look at the consultation that the council published yesterday, which I've come back to the fact that it is a consultation, so it's something that the council needs to keep an open mind on. But if you have a look at the reasons for the council proposing that there will be a further ban on consumption of alcohol on London fields this summer, you can see that there's a sentence there that actually probably sums up some of the issues around London fields as having experienced issues with large groups drinking in the park and surrounding area, which has led to unacceptable levels of antisocial behaviour, litter, public urination and defecation, impacting on local residents' quality of life and their ability to use the park. Now, while, as you say, you didn't see that there was any direct cause between you guys being there selling cocktails on the 15th of May and any of those issues, I think what we're talking about here is just an accumulation of licensed premises in the area, people going to the park, and it was exacerbated last summer with is the thinking by the fact that many people were cooped up in their homes during the lockdown, and then when there was that nice weather, and they couldn't gather indoors, then they did go to London Fields in order to drink and, understandably enjoy themselves. Now, there is that real concern. And then them doing that really had an impact on people living on and around London Fields. There is this concern here again that there will be that will happen again, and that these residents will have to put up with those very negative effects of people consuming alcohol on London Fields. So I think what this panel has to do is try to reassure itself that in allowing your temporary event notice to go ahead, you won't be contributing to those very, very serious and negative effects for those residents. Now, I see in your email to us, then you did talk about the fact that you're not going to be playing music. The police and the security guards didn't object to any the way in which you were using that area or your clientele, and you didn't notice any bad behaviour by your clientele. I'm just wondering whether you can provide us with any more reassurance that in allowing this temporary event notice to go ahead, that there won't be these very negative effects for residents.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to assure you that we have no intention of any of this, and it's for our own benefit that people are behaving socially around us. We are trying to build a brand MeTV all around London, maybe whole UK, about. Therefore, any negative behavior from the patrons will negatively impact our brand as well. So it's definitely, we don't want any disturbance, any public nuisance or loud noises or complaints from residents on social media or any other forums naming our brand and associating our brand with these negative effects. So that's literally the last thing we want. Therefore, as soon as we see that something is happening, we will try to, ask people nicely to disperse. And if that's not going to work, then we can always ask security or anyone else to assist. But I don't believe that our clientele is going to cause any problems, because it's a cocktail bar. It's not a pub. Is not off license where people go and buy a lot of alcohol. It's very tasty, slightly expensive drink where people just have it with ice and move on. It's not like they can afford to be there and drink all day with us.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. I think a problem is your ability to control what your clientele, what your customers do. You sell them a cocktail and they wander off into London Fields, like towards the Lido or down towards Broadway Market or elsewhere in London Fields. They're then out of your control, aren't they? They're out of your sight probably. So it's difficult to see how you might make sure that the people that you're selling cocktails to aren't contributing to the antisocial behaviour that we've seen on London Fields.
So I would like to point out that we also, it's illegal to sell alcohol to someone who is already drunk or causing any antisocial behavior. Therefore, I will tell to my staff, or I will keep this rule that we will never sell alcohol to someone who is behaving antisocially or demanding drinks or not walking straight. So therefore, I believe, and also our operating hours are from 1 to 7. So people already won't start drink that early or being drunk that early. And yes, you mentioned like they disperse, they go deeper to the London and surrounding areas. Yeah, we can't really control that, what they are going to do a few hours after they purchase cocktails from us. But then nothing really differentiates us from any other licensed premises in the area.
If I could just come back in on that, I fully I think what you said is very helpful, but I think the difficulty is if it was a pub or a bar, which is, a fixed premise, if there was an issue, in a worst case scenario, you would just close them and stop serving, and people wouldn't be able to access that point. In your case, I know that your premises is a particular location close to London Fields. From the residents' perspective, the issue is when people do disappear off into the park, and I'm wondering if there's more that you could provide. I know they're not your responsibility. However, a response is to not provide the license, which means that people don't wander off into the park and do all of these terrible things. But equally, just wondering if there's more that you could do to kind of reassure some of those residents. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it does.
Just before you come in on that, I'd just like to just maybe add a little bit more to your question, Councillor Member. So I think this is a great business idea. I admire your entrepreneurialism. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you.
This site that you've chosen is the problem. If it was in any other park or by any other park, in Hackney, I strongly suspect we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. But the issue is this particular park and the history and the current context of this particular park. Sorry, I'll let you answer Councillor Mermer's question.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand the complaints, and I understand the worries of the residents that our sale of alcohol can bring, but I also see that we are selling something unique and something that people looking forward to, and it's not heavily drinking. They don't go into our establishment and stay with us for a few hours and keep drinking, and then leave our establishment, and then they cause public nuisance. Like, they literally just walk by, they have one very low alcoholic drink, and then just keep going. So I think there is less harm in that than any other licensed premise in the area. And if that would help, we can maybe shorten our serving hours. If 7 p.m. is still too long and it still might cause some issues, we can easily cut the hour or two, if that would help to reassure the residents that our intentions are within there.
Okay.
So something that you said as well is that you're not adding to the impact of antisocial behaviour in the park any more than the pub just down the stretch from where we're talking about, the premises that we're talking about. Now, I mean, that may very well be the case, and indeed, undoubtedly, to my mind, is the case that the pub will probably contribute to drunkenness and maybe antisocial behaviour in the park more than your bike would, and given the capacity for the pub to sell beer or whatever, then clearly that's going to be the case. But what we're considering here is the cumulative impact of adding another premises selling alcohol, albeit just a cargo bike. Mr. Patty, is there anything that we can do here to try to alleviate and mitigate the risk of this cargo bike and cocktails being sold from this cargo bike adding to the issues that we've seen in London Fields?
I mean, if there was some form of noise management plan that was originally submitted, stating somewhere maybe along the lines that customers would be moved on fairly swiftly and quickly, they wouldn't hang around. That's the norm, I suppose, with a stall like this. But as you've very clearly pointed out, Councillor Peters, this is a highly sensitive area around London Fields, and I actually agree. If this was probably near any other park in Hackney, we, in all honesty, wouldn't be sitting here right now. But we've got, unfortunately, a highly sensitive area where residents, and it's no offence to Daniel or his company, it's nothing personal from what I can see. It's just another, in their minds, this is another business that is operating and selling alcohol, adding to the cumulative impact in the area, and it's in their minds, and from what they've witnessed, allegedly it's causing them significant disturbance, and they don't want that there, and they shouldn't be subjected to it, especially on a weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just quickly ask, sorry, Gertch, are you suggesting that there isn't a mitigation? Because Daniel has suggested that they could reduce hours by 1 or 2.
I mean, that might help, but that doesn't mean, I mean, anyone who's had X amount of alcohol inside their system, they don't really stand there and think to themselves, oh, do you know what, it's 5 p.m, I can't be too loud. I mean, when there's alcohol running through the system and they're standing congregated outside the stall, they're going to shout. They'll have raised voices. How Daniel can control that physically himself, and it just becomes a lot more difficult unless he was to have security there, for example, or, as you say, it's not a fixed location, it's not a fixed premises where you could close the bar down. He could theoretically, I know he very kindly, perhaps because of the complaints that came through during the previous 10, ended the temporary event notice earlier, an hour earlier, which is obviously very nice of him. He didn't have to do that. But again, just to highlight, residents in that area, as soon as they hear some form of impact from another licensed vendor in that shape or form, are not happy. And we're going to continue to get those complaints.
Yeah, so that's helpful. Daniel, you'll continue to get complaints. If you trade in that area, people will complain about the fact that anyone is selling any form of alcohol there on top of what's being sold there. You still want this temporary event notice to trade there on those 2 days?
I mean, yes, I would like to, because it's also brand awareness for us. It's a high footfall area, so even if we don't serve the customers, they still see us, and then they will approach us in another locations. We also serve in, farmers markets all around London, so it's very beneficial for us to be there, even for the shorter hours, or not allowing to people congregate if we have to disperse them immediately. Like, there were a point that we can have a security guard. I don't really mind to hire a security guard or get myself SEI certification, so I can become security guard if that's necessary.
Okay. I mean, if you were to run this, have this 10, or these 2 10s actually, because they're on 2 separate days, aren't they? And then you were to receive a high number of complaints, it may jeopardize your ability to be able to trade elsewhere in the borough, I think.
Therefore, okay, like if that will cause more troubles with licensing committee and for future of my business in your borough, then I would then not trade on London Fields, but I would like to then apply it for, I don't know, close to Victoria Park or Clissold Park, if that would be more acceptable location.
So I'm not saying that this would necessarily lead to trading on these 2 days would necessarily lead to that consequence. I'm just saying that, I mean, it's something to consider. We'll have to, Councillor Mohammed and I will have to think about whether or not to grant this to issue a counter notice, I think, is what we've got to actually decide about. But you're saying that you'd be willing to limit the hours from currently it's 1 till 7 to 1 till 6 or 1 till 5 on each of the days, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Mohammed, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
No further questions from me.
In which case, I think we're finished with the discussion part of this conversation, of this meeting. and then we can go to closing remarks. So I'll start with to Daniel. Did you have anything further that you wanted to say? You don't have to, but just very briefly.
I would just like to thank you for your time and consideration for our business to go forward. And I hope that, I know that you have a bigger questions to answer by this hearing. And yeah, I hope the decision will be beneficial for all of us and for the residents of the surrounding area.
Yeah. I mean, we genuinely want your business to succeed, but we've got to really consider whether it's appropriate for this temporary event notice to be used in this area. Mr. Patty, did you have any final comments?
I think I've made the main points in my first statement. But I'd just like the panel to consider the precedent that they could be setting here if they did allow this temporary event notice to go ahead. And this is nothing against Daniel or his business, but what's to say if Daniel was to have his temporary event notice granted this time around, despite all the complaints and probably the complaints that will follow if the temporary event notice is granted. What's to say other businesses just can't, that they don't turn up in the future and start applying for similar temporary event notices. This, as you can imagine, it's going to be an ongoing cycle in terms of complaints from the residents, because I'm sure the residents are unlikely to know Daniel personally. It's the activity, the sale of alcohol, the congregation of patrons in and around this vicinity that is causing the issue. So I'd just like the panel to consider that and the precedent that they could be setting by allowing this temporary event notice to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. That is really helpful. I think the next step in the meeting is an opportunity for any final clarification that Councillor Merma or I may need. Looks like we don't. So given that, we're going to retire and consider our decision. And for that reason, I think we're all going to. How do we do this? Do we? Clifford?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We will ask that that Daniel withdraws from proceedings. The live recording will cease, and then members can go into camera and deliberate on the notice with our legal representative Amanda, and all other parties will lead the proceedings.
So Daniel, thank you very much for coming this evening, and we will let you know the outcome of our decision certainly within 24 hours.
Thank you so much, and have a nice evening.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Bye.
Nice.